So today I'm going to look at snacking, and we're going to talk about how you can better utilize snacking to A, get more out of your performance, and B, not derail your performance as much. So snacking is a great time to do a lot of different things, accomplish a lot of different things from the nutrition and the health standpoint. But it's also a time where things can really go off the rails, right? I can think of many times where I opened a bag of something like chips or, pretzels or chocolate. And all of a sudden I, wake up out of the funk a few minutes later and realize I've eaten three-quarters of that bag, right? So performance snacking is very much a part of your process, and it's something I want you to think about as we head into the new year, right? It's New Year's resolution season. It's also a great reminder as maybe you're heading back to campus after some time away and you're just looking for a better way to snack, right? And utilize this time more effectively. So this will be a quick presentation just looking at some of the benefits and some things that you can do and also some recommendations as well. Before we get too far into this, one thing I want to point out is this is not going to be a presentation on exactly how much food you should eat, what your individual goals are and things like that. This is going to be a more broad brushstroke, so to speak. And you can always reference that meal building guide that I've built out as a resource to remember what your goals are, what you're aiming for. And then just remember that snacking funnels into your overall daily goals. So this is not going to get super specific. I'm not going to say, hey, I want you to have 12 slices of an orange. We're not going to do anything like that. This is just going to be some basics for you to think about and hopefully implement as we move forward. So a quick review of the basics of nutrition that I've talked about in the past. And the overarching thing I want you to remember is I want you to make the best choice you can with the options you have. So sometimes, you might not be able to buy the best food, right? Maybe it's not an option based off of geography. For example, when I lived in the Pocono Mountains, our grocery stores just actually weren't that great. The food was not the highest quality. A lot of it came already, kind of stale or moldy sometimes in terms of fruits and vegetables, which is really tough, right? I can't control that. I can't control, how fast the food gets there. In college, right, I had to go to the dining common. I was on a meal plan. So I couldn't control how the food was prepared in a dining common, but I could make the best choice out of the options I had available. So I want you to keep that in mind. Don't get, so caught up in what someone else is doing based off of the resources they have available. But I want you to think about doing the best you can with the resources you have available. And it comes down to a couple really simple keys that we often just overcomplicate. So we want to avoid processed food. That's number one. Anything that had to be modified to sit on the shelf for a long period of time is something that's been processed. It's been altered from ground to consumption. And that's something that we just want to try to avoid. And there's just some reasoning behind that in terms of controlling your calorie consumption a little bit more naturally and not having to worry about overeating as much. Eat a lot of color. So I always show this picture here of some fruits, some vegetables, different nuts that you can eat. You can see this wide range of color. And if you kind of fall in this trap of you're only eating green or you're only eating yellow, you might be missing out on key nutrients. So we want to have a wide range of color. And the simple way to make sure you're getting the most out of your diet is to operate with that wide brushstroke of color. Make sure you're getting different colors in each meal. The next one is hydrate. This is something I really hammer down on because it's something almost all of us can control. I don't really see too many situations where hydration cannot be an active thing that we can control, right? Most of us are not in a third world country scenario where we have poor water sources. So we generally have access to water. Water is pretty cheap, even if you have to buy that water. And so it's something that you can control a little bit more readily, and it plays a major role in your performance and just how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And the last one is sleep. Sleep is a time where you process everything that happened that day, helps prepare you for the next day. It makes sure you're recovering at a high level. You're really hardwiring all those changes that we've worked on, and it plays a role in your nutrition, how well you're consuming all those resources that you've actually actively consumed. Now it's your body's chance to go in there and take all those different resources and put them to use. So let's talk about some speed bumps. And I just want you to avoid these common mistakes. The more you know, the more you can avoid or make proper decisions. So sometimes we'll grab something more processed because we did not prepare a better option when we had more time to prepare. So processed foods are great because, right, they're readily available. They don't take any sort of preparation, but they come with a cost, right? There's a cost associated with that. Sometimes it's harder for our bodies to actually utilize those resources. It's more stress on our bodies to go ahead and digest something that's been severely processed. There's research. If you see this little picture over to the right, the Pop-Tart problem, for example, that study looked at just comparing processed diet versus unprocessed, and there's a lot of overeating that occurs in a processed diet. If you're generally consuming processed foods, you might not know when you're full. You might eat too much, which results in changes to body composition that might not be valuable for you. They might be, they might not be, right? Generally, it's going to result in a change that we don't want to happen with that processed food in mind. And then the next thing is, remember, when you snack, it's still a part of your daily goal. So if we go back to that meal building worksheet that I've talked about in the past, it still funnels into that. You want to factor your snacks into that daily goal. And that's something that we forget. And then all of a sudden we're wondering why we're not seeing any change in our body composition if that's a goal of ours. And it's because the snacking just made up too much, that it overpowered our good meals in terms of that extra calorie intake we were getting. And then we often lead with food instead of leading with water. And this is a big foundational change that you can make that will really just completely change your nutritional process. Start every snacking experience with some water consumption, even if it's a few sips of water. Start every meal with some water consumption. And by doing this, a few things happen. Number one, we really focus on the hydration piece of things. We're able to make sure we're hydrated so we can perform at a high level. And we'll talk about the importance of that a little bit more as we go on. And then we're actually able to make sure we're not overeating during that time. So a lot of times dehydration results in, just feelings of hunger. You feel more hungry because you're dehydrated. And that's something we want to avoid, is that overeating that actually is a cry for thirst, right? It's a cry for water by our bodies that we've thought is something that, we need more food instead. And then we often think that snacks have a limited role in our daily nutritional process, and really they have a massive role. There's times that we can't sit down for a major meal, for hours upon end. So snacking, it might seem as something just like trivial or small, but really it plays a huge role in the daily nutritional process. And that's why you can make such key changes that have lasting impact, through your snacking. So let's talk about the basics of snacking. And, just again, a reminder, snacks count towards your daily nutritional goal. They're not separate, right? It doesn't fall in a different category. It doesn't work that way. When it comes to snacking, there's a couple things I want you to think about. In terms of storage of carbohydrate, we store carbohydrate in our body in the form of glycogen. Hard, intense training depletes glycogen stores, and glycogen depletion results in feelings of exhaustion, fatigue, and things like that if we do not replenish those stores after training. Okay. Hydration levels play a major role in performance capabilities. 1% to 2% dehydration, we've talked about this in the past, basically has the effects of drunk driving on an agility test. If we're looking at some measure of how well you can be agile with your brain and adjust according to changing environments. So just a small dehydration can really impair what you're trying to do. And then, as I mentioned earlier, dehydration can also express as a feeling of hunger. And then that can lead you on the incorrect path with your nutrition in terms of eating more when you really need to drink more water. And both carbohydrate and hydration levels are critical to your performance and also your recovery. So that is a very simple, very watered down overview of the importance of picking the right snacks or picking valuable snack options and making the best choice you have with the resources you have available. We're not going to go any more in depth in this talk. We can totally do that offline if you'd like to. But I want to give you just kind of the basic playbook, what you can do, what you can implement tomorrow, and have some effective change. So build your snacking plan. This is a really important process because unfortunately and fortunately, we all respond differently to food. One thing that works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me, right? And the example I use is, on a team environment, each person on that team can respond differently to the same food. So it makes it a little bit of a challenge, right? It's a little bit of a mental frustration point where you're like, man, I got to figure this out. And that's where practices, or if you're doing kind of a dry run of figuring out your performance plan, especially in the snacking realm, is key, because you don't want to head into a national championship type environment not knowing and just kind of shooting in the dark, right? Because food can cause distress, right? It can cause discomfort. It can cause, pain, headaches, and that can deplete the resource you have available to go out and perform and achieve whatever you would like to achieve. So you have to kind of go through this ahead of time and figure out at least somewhat of a plan that's going to work with you, for you, so that you don't have that GI distress, you don't have that discomfort, you don't feel like you're just, you're nauseous before you go up to compete, or, whatever you're trying to accomplish. So, because that's just not going to work, right? So use time before your major goals to figure this out. And that could be at practice, that could be during training, that could just be in day-to-day life. Hey, I'm going to try X, Y, and Z today, and I'm just going to document how I feel. And if I feel good, then I might implement that before practice, for example. And the next thing I want you to think about is pre-portion things. This is something I have to always remind myself, because if I just go and open a bag of chips, right, and I like veggie straws, right? I like the little salt taste. I like that, that chip type feel. But if I just open the bag and eat the whole bag, did I really get the value I was looking for? I probably went too far, right? Most foods are not going to be that bad or that derailing, as long as they're portion managed and you don't just have this open bag approach. So I like to just have these, little snack bags ready to go throughout the course of a week. So it's there, it's prepared. It's not something I'm trying to grab in a rushed environment. It's something I think about ahead of time and have a plan. And then that way I'm not just opening that bag and eating through all of it when really that was supposed to last me the whole week, for example. And also, finally, review your snacks as a holdover, or something that's just getting you to that next meal for when you can sit down and really build out that proper meal that you're looking for. They definitely have value. The snacks can fill a lot of gaps and things like that we can talk about. But I want you to think of it as, just trying to get you to that next meal. And when you do that, it just helps compartmentalize snacks a little bit more, I believe, instead of allowing them just to kind of be this endless process. If you realize, hey, in a couple hours, I'm going to be able to sit down and eat a proper meal. Fantastic. Let's get just the right amount of snacking in there to get us to that next meal. And then that way we're not just kind of having the snack that just goes on for 30 to 40 minutes and we're just kind of eating bits here and there, and all of a sudden we've fallen off the rails a little bit. So we're going to look at pre-practice snacking that you can do, and the key things that I want you to focus on. Again, this is not going to be exact measures of what you should eat. That's going to be person to person specific, and that's going to depend on your daily goals, right? And that goes back to that meal building exercise that we talked about. During your pre-practice snacking, your goal should be able to boost your energy a little bit, right? We want to feel good. We don't want to feel lethargic heading into practice. We want to top off hydration. We want to make sure, we talked about the benefits of hydration and the issue with dehydration. And then you want to feel great. You don't want to feel sluggish. You don't want to feel super full, feel like you're carrying around a bunch of extra weight. We don't want that feeling, right? We want to feel pretty good. So what I want you to think about is focusing on the smart carbohydrates, the fruit, and a little bit of protein. And yes, fruit and smart carbohydrates kind of blend together there, but those are three things you can focus on. that fruit's going to add some energy and also a hydration component, because fruit is generally made up of water, right? There's a lot of water in there. So it helps combat dehydration as well and adds a little bit of flavor, right? And then you get a little bit of sugar in there. That's your smart carbohydrate. So your body's ready to perform. And your goal is to feel content but not full. And the reason for that is when you feel full, I generally associate full with feeling sluggish, right? I feel like I need a nap after I'm full. So you want to get rid of the hunger pains. You don't want the growling stomach, because that's going to take away from your mental focus in a practice. But then you don't want to feel like you're just kind of there and kind of sluggish, right? You're carrying around that extra. So find that content point. And that's where that little dash of protein in your pre-practice snack can help with that. It can help you feel content. It can also help balance out if, say, you ate something that does cause a really big spike in your blood glucose levels. Protein can just kind of help make you a little bit more even keel. So you feel that energy, you're able to use the energy, but you're not going to have that spike and crash that we often feel if we overeat on the sugar end of things. So the protein just kind of helps keep you in balance throughout that process. Moving on to your post-practice snacks, you want to focus on recovery, right? Give your body the resources to recover. So in this phase, you're going to focus on smart carbohydrates, protein, and healthy fats. So you can see very small difference, right? We said smart carbohydrates, fruit, and a little bit of protein pre-practice. Then after practice, we're still focusing on smart carbohydrates because we need to replenish all the stores we utilize during practice. And that replenishment also helps fend off muscle soreness and fatigue that can affect future training sessions. Protein helps with the remodeling process. It helps rebuild after a training session and really allow you to grow and reach a new level. And the healthy fats can help you transport different resources throughout your body. Your healthy fats help with cell growth and also allow your body just to function at a high level. You need to consume some form of fat to really help be at your best. So you can see small tweak there, right? So we went smart carbs, fruit, and a little bit of protein pre-practice. Now we're going smart carbs, protein, and healthy fats post. And this way you can just allow yourself to basically process everything you just did in training and still feel good throughout the course of the day. The final category is during the day, right? Training is still a relatively small amount of your daily process. Even if you're doing a strength training session, your sport practice, and even if you're doing a double, right, it's still a small chunk of the overall portion of your day. So there's a lot of time that you might be doing other things. The reason I focus on daily snacking is because it's a great time to fill any sort of gaps that you're aware of that are things you struggle with. So maybe you just don't eat that many vegetables. You don't really like them, or you can't just eat a whole lot of them in one sitting, right? So you use snacking as a way to kind of disguise some of that consumption. Maybe you don't eat a whole lot of fruit. Fruit's pretty easy to throw in your bag for the day and then get it out and eat throughout the course of the day. And then generally I see an underestimation of protein consumption. So mix that into your snacks to help fill the gaps and make sure you're hitting all your goal nutrient values for the day. And the reason I focus on protein, fruits, and vegetables throughout the course of the day is because consumption levels are generally underestimated for these categories. So fruits and vegetables, if we go back to that original picture of all those colors, different color means different nutrient. Okay, there's different micronutrients that are there that might help you, just not feel as fatigued and help balance out your mood and help things like your hair and nails grow and your skin to look vibrant, right? They have this nice platform to provide all of those things. So you can build that into your snacking, right? The color spectrum can be built into your snacking. And then the protein side of it, I always like the protein allows you to feel a little bit more even keel throughout the day. So you don't have as many spikes and drops in your mood associated with food. Okay, food has an amazing way to make us feel all the energy in the world and then kind of have that crash. So we want to avoid that. We want to have that even keel operational, baseline, so that when it's time to go up and turn it up a notch, we're not trying to dig out of a hole of just sleepy, exhausted feeling, day. And then if we need to bring it down after training really hard, we're able to do so a little bit easier with that balance. And finally, during the day, focus on your hydration. Okay. The goal is to consume water throughout the course of your day and not do this thing I call a water dump where you're just like, oh crap, I haven't had any water today. And then you just chug a bottle of water. Your body can only consume and actually process a certain amount of water, and the rest just gets kind of pushed out through your system faster. So taking smaller calculated amounts throughout the course of the day is more valuable than just chugging water because you forgot to drink all day. So use your snack time. Again, remember I talked about that point of let's lead with water instead of leading with food. So that's where that fundamental change can come in. You're like, okay, it's time for me to have a snack. You take a few sips of water before I eat, and then maybe a few sips of water afterward. And then you can really fine tune your process throughout the course of the day. So a little bit of a change there. Proteins, fruits, and vegetables are a good way to fill your gaps throughout the course of the day with your daily snacking. Let's talk about coffee. I get this question a lot. Well, yeah, I like coffee. How does that fit into my snacking? And really, it comes down to just being strategic about it. So a really cool thing is your body stores energy in the form of fat. You might think it's cool, you might not think it's cool, but it's a good storage form of energy. But it's really slow to kind of activate and tap into fat and use fat for energy. It takes a little bit longer. That's why our body likes carbohydrates to kick it off. So there's some research out there that shows if you drink some coffee before an endurance activity, you actually tap into fat energy usage a little bit faster because it kicks off that activation process a little bit faster. That being said, you have to focus on the amount you're consuming. 1 cup before practice, this kind of get your mind right. You just got out of bed or whatever. You feel like you need that little bit of kick. Fantastic. That's a great way. In 1 cup, think about 6 to 8 ounce range. And I know that seems pretty small for a lot of people, right? We're used to the 16, 20 ounces. Think about dialing that back a little bit. Multiple cups before practice could result in GI distress. And then also, there's a diuretic effect, which means you could dehydrate a little bit faster. The biggest thing to keep in mind is when you're doing this coffee consumption, your hydration, your water consumption still needs to be in check. If you're behind the 8 ball in your water consumption, your energy levels might be low because of that. And your coffee consumption is just going to disguise that for a shorter period of time. So let's fix the foundational issue of dehydration before adding coffee in as just a simple band-aid that's not going to fix the overall problem. And the key also is to know how your body responds. Some people cannot drink coffee before working out or going to a sport practice, right? It just does not work. Some people can drink it and go right in and be good to go. And the other thing is, remember that all that stuff you're adding funnels into your daily nutritional goals. So if you're adding a ton of sugar, a ton of cream, all of that, that needs to be documented and factored into your daily nutritional process. I always say, if you're able to do it, I'd rather you buy a higher quality coffee bean and have the nice really ground coffee and spend a little bit more money there, which will still be cheaper than all the stuff you can get added in somewhere else, and then just drink it black, because the coffee actually tastes really, really good because you got it from a quality source. That'll still be cheaper in the long run than you going and buying something and adding all this other stuff to it. And it helps keep your nutritional profile intact and not send you off the rails. So black coffee is best. And then from there, adding as little as possible to get to the point where you can enjoy it. If you enjoy coffee, is key. And that honestly comes down to the source of the coffee. So you could spend a little bit more on that coffee that you're putting in your coffee pot at home. And then you might not need as much additive to make it taste great or make it taste enjoyable, because food should still be enjoyable, right? And then you're actually still saving money and not derailing your nutritional process. What about chocolate milk? Right? Chocolate milk is all the jive. You see all the advertisements, like USA Swimming did a whole campaign on the importance of chocolate milk. And the thing I think that's important is that you understand the why, or like how this came to be. So there's a picture here of Dr. Joel Steger of Indiana. And I got to actually hear him speak at a master swimming clinic. And for me, I didn't really understand why chocolate milk was so highly regarded as a recovery supplement, because I was like, "God, I just feel like it adds too much caloric value, or adds too much calorie consumption to people that maybe do not need that much calorie consumption post exercise." And actually, Dr. Steger gave a really cool presentation. He talked about the Indiana swimming team, and he's like, we were losing, muscle mass, we were losing weight, and performance measures were going down in the pool. So something was wrong. When he actually dove into this a little bit more, he found that the women's team was leaving practice and they would go home and they would get nice and dressed up for class. They would, put their hair all together, do all the routine, and then they would run out of time to eat. So they would go to class without consuming anything after practice. On the men's side, the men were going home just kind of lounging around, being lazy, taking their time to the point where they forgot to really eat or consume anything before going to class. Then they both go sit in class, both teams would go sit in class all day and then not get something in their bodies until like lunchtime. And this was just affecting everything that they're doing. So one of the swimmers one day had a recovery shake, and Dr. Steger liked the combination of what was in it and made sense for what he was looking for. And then he just happened to see that chocolate milk had the same general profile as that recovery shake that the swimmer was spending a lot of money on. So he made the recommendation to consume chocolate milk after practice, because the teams were not taking the time to go eat after practice, right? They were just going on to their classes and it was affecting their performance. So, in that scenario, chocolate milk is a fantastic choice, right? If you've only completed a 30-minute practice and you really didn't get your heart rate up and there was not that much volume, the calories associated with chocolate milk might not make sense for you, right? You might not really need that much after training. I think it's a great thing to implement in an endurance environment or in a longer practice format. So if you're practicing for 2 hours a day and then you have a lifting session, that there's some value there. But my advice is to consume wisely. Number one, make sure you're actually consuming the right amount. So it's easy to drink, 2 or 3 servings when really you only needed one. And then make sure you truly put in the effort and the work that you needed to earn that chocolate milk. So if you're just adding it in for the sake of adding it in without really understanding the reason the chocolate milk idea came to be, you could just be adding in something that's not really going to help you, and then in the long run could hurt your performance over time. So I like to understand the why. Chocolate milk is a great choice if it fits your need, right? So always think about that. Let's look at pre-snacking. So at the end of the day, you got to figure out what works for you. Some of these things will not work for you, some of them will. My goal is to hopefully give you at least one idea of something, and you can look at any combination you want. Just remember, focus on smart carbs, fruit, and a little bit of protein. So the pre-snacks, overnight oats with fresh fruit, trail mix, focusing on the ones with nuts and dry fruit versus candied yogurt variations. Whole grain cereal, so just like a little bit of cereal in a bag with fresh fruit, no milk, so it's something you could just like pick with your hands and eat. I put some bars down here because I always get a lot of questions about different bars. The ones I find that seem to work best are RX bar, Kind bar, Lara bar, and Core bar. You can see a picture of the Core bar up in the corner here, and that bar is gluten free and vegan. And the thing is, you got to remember that a lot of these bars are going to add a lot of sugar just to make things taste really, really good. But make sure you take time to see where that sugar is coming from. If it's sugar, like a Lara bar, you would see actually has a lot of sugar, but its base is dates. So dates are just high in sugar in general. Different bars are going to have a little bit higher sugar content, but it's coming from fruit. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. If it's just being added for the sake of flavoring, probably not the best choice, right? So look at the sources, where it's coming from, and what the purpose of that sugar is in the bar itself. Another example, banana with a scoop of peanut butter. Be cautious of how much peanut butter. I've talked about that before. It's very sad to see the serving of peanut butter because it's so good, but it's not as big as we would hope, right? So keep that in mind as you're going into your snacking process. And again, Remember your snacks funnel into your daily goals. Some post-snack examples: protein shake with some fresh fruit, hard-boiled eggs, something you can prepare ahead of time, pretzel twist with some peanut butter, whole wheat crackers, yogurt, fresh fruit. I actually like to take some Greek yogurt, put it over a whole wheat cracker, and sprinkle some fresh fruit on top. It's a really nice little snack. And then one of my other ones, salted pumpkin seeds and dried fruit. Kind of make a trail mix alternative. It's pretty good as well. And you get some protein in there with the pumpkin seeds. So again, couple examples here. Just has to fit the goal profile of smart carbohydrate, protein, and some healthy fat, right? It could be anything under the sun that fits that category. These are just some examples that you can reference. And then sample day snacks. One thing you can utilize is hummus, sliced vegetables. Don't knock this next one until you try it, but sliced avocado, a little dashing of soy sauce and sea salt. That was one I learned in Japan. It was absolutely amazing and very easy to prepare. If you like sushi, it's a kind of a good, if it has the taste of that type of food, and it kind of just is a nice alternative that you can take on the road. Mixed nuts, whole grain crackers and olives, tuna, celery sticks. Those different combinations can help you get some snacks throughout the course of your day. And again, remember, this takes a little bit of planning, right? You have to prepare these snacks. One thing I like to do is on Sunday, just kind of break things down into some smaller Tupperware so it's ready to grab and go, right? I don't have to think about it when I'm busy. I take time when I have time to actually build this stuff out, so I'm not making those rushed process choices when my week just gets out of control. Okay? So those are some examples you can utilize. I challenge you to really review this before the next shopping trip you take, or if you're getting ready to stock up for a new semester, or you're just getting ready to reset as we head into 2021. It's a great time to look at some practices and make the best choices we can with the options we have. My final thoughts to kind of close this out is, again, pick the options that you enjoy and that you actually consume, and make sure those are the best options out of the choices you have. So eating should still be enjoyable, right? Snacking should still be enjoyable, because if you don't like it, then you're not going to consume it, and then we just wasted money. So that's the whole nother thing we want to avoid. But again, strive for those changes, right? What can you do? Maybe you don't like trail mix, but maybe you like pumpkin seeds. Great. Go for the pumpkin seeds. Maybe you need a little bit of salt on top of those pumpkin seeds to really enjoy them. You can't really do it unsalted. Awesome. Make that choice and find the options that you'll enjoy, the ones that you'll actually consume, but they're the best options out of the choices you have available. And then eliminate the options that are counterproductive. The simplest thing for me, like if there's chocolate in front of me, if there's cake in front of me, sweets, I'm drawn to eat that, right? It's there, it's in front of me, it's accessible. If it's not accessible, I can't eat it. So if you don't buy it and it's not there in your cabinet, and you don't know it's there staring at you from behind the cabinet door, then you can't go out there and make that poor choice when you're rushed or you're super hungry, so you just want to grab something. And that comes into the next point of preparing ahead of time. Make sure you're prepared, have a plan, portion things out ahead of time so you can control the snacking and not kind of go with that open bag approach. And then be willing to explore the options and then settle on a plan that works for you. So you want to be able to head into your goal event or your goal discipline and have a plan in place and not just be shooting in the dark. It's not the morning of your goal event is not the time to try to figure out a nutritional plan. It is months prior when you get to test things, and maybe you'll have an off practice because you ate something that didn't sit well with you. Much better for that to happen then than when you're heading into nationals and things like that. So hope you found this useful. Love to see you implement some of these tips, and definitely reach out if you have any questions.